we've been waiting to see what's going to happen with Brian Johnson. That was the last missing ingredient of the offensive staff. Well, the Rams just put out their 2026 coaching staff, and it looks like Brian Johnson is going to be part of their staff. The Rams, as a senior offensive assistant, is going to be the name of the title for Brian Johnson. Meanwhile, Cliff Kingsbury is with the Rams as the assistant head coach. So we knew he had been hired. We didn't really know what this role was going to look like, but they put out their staff, and they list Sean McVay, head coach, Cliff Kingsbury, assistant head coach, then all the offensive assistants, then all the defensive assistants after that. Then they have special teams and then game management. But I find it really interesting. Cliff Kingsbury doesn't have an offensive title at all. He's not listed on the offensive staff with like Nate Schilhaas, the coordinator, and Dave Ragone, the associate coordinator, quarterbacks, all this stuff. He's just the assistant head coach. So if Sean McVay's got to miss a week to go do something, Cliff Kingsbury just takes over.
He gets an appendectomy. It's Cliff's team. Yeah, it's. I was wondering what was going to happen to Brian Johnson when, I don't want to say he got passed over exactly, but maybe you could say it that way. When a guy that's called plays before, wasn't tremendously successful, but in Philadelphia was some pedigree, and they go David Blau, and I get the sense that Brian Johnson was a Kingsbury guy. So I was kind of wondering, how's that going to work? Well, now we got our answer.
I'm looking at this, and John Keim had posted on a retweet of the Rams staff. Brian Johnson joins the Rams as a senior offensive assistant. But I don't even see Brian Johnson's name on this list. So I guess there are more coaches than are just listed here, unless here it is down at the bottom on the defensive staff side of it. I don't know why they listed him with defensive staff. That's why I was looking at their offensive roster. I'm like, there's no Brian Johnson here. So under defensive staff at the very bottom, they list him as senior offensive assistant, Brian Johnson. So here's my question from a Washington perspective. When they went with David Blau, I felt good about the hire, and I liked that they were keeping him in the building. But my response that day was, you better bring in some experienced coaches, and you better keep some of the guys with some pelts on the wall in this building. A lot of them left.
Yeah.
They promote the most important coordinator hire that you're going to make on offense is O-line. They promote from within a first-time O-line coach. They don't really have a very experienced offensive staff at all at this point under Blau. I like that they were able to keep Rye, the tight ends coach, who's pretty popular in the building. That feels like a big deal. But if you look at it, Danny, where is the experience that you kind of thought you were going to have to go with when you went with Blau? The only guy that you would say, at least they kept him around because he's been a head coach is Anthony Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, Lynn butted enough heads last year with Bobby Johnson, and I had been told that's part of the reason their O-line coach, everybody like Bobby Johnson, was out. So maybe Lynn, who's got the Detroit back room when Blau was there, maybe it was like a Blau and Lynn versus, Bobby Johnson.
Different silos or factions,
and Cliff Kingsbury thing.
You look, there are guys that have been around, but is that, I don't know, there aren't the pure and simple offensive mentors. There are guys, Bobby Ingram's been around forever as a wide receivers coach, and I'm sure he can be helpful. Same with Anthony Lynn. Different perspectives, different voices at the table, but it's not that, to your point, been through the ringer, long-time OC who's been downgraded a little bit, but still very useful. Still very, a guy that at one point was in vogue and the hot candidate, but now is grizzled, gray-haired, and probably a little bit overweight. They can kind of tell you about the ups and downs.
Maybe it's just Anthony Lynn. Maybe he's the guy. You talk about Bobby Ingram. Yes, he was a wide receivers coach back in Baltimore for a couple years, and 2012, 2013, whatever. But he really hasn't been much of the most recent years. It was not until the Washington job, when he came back from college, that he started doing that in the league. But maybe I just have to say, okay, Anthony Lynn is that guy. And even though I feel like there's a little bit of some like old school, like dinosaur football stuff, that's what he's going to provide and bring, and that's why he's here, and that's a good thing. But he is the experienced voice in the headset of David Blau to help him. I wanted more of that. I got one guy, but I'm just going to have to be okay with that. I got a dude who's never called plays, who's an OC, who's going to have to learn a lot on the fly, and basically it's Anthony Lynn among the really helpful, been around the block offensive coaches on the staff.
And I know this might annoy some people, but again, I always think about this when it comes to pro sports, even college sports to a degree. we judge you on the expectations that you set. So every year, for so many years, as a then Redskins fan, when they would win the offseason with some big, major, free agent addition or trade or whatever, and they set the expectation, now we're going to be great, and they were failures, it would always feel like such a bitter disappointment. But if you tell me up front, hey, man, we're rebuilding, whether you actually say that word or not, I don't get as disappointed. They told us, basically through, whatever you want to call it, leaks or reports or otherwise, yeah, we want some experience at this one spot. We're going to have a young guy that's going to require a lot of mentorship and a lot of, help you along, understanding there are going to be ups and downs. And then there isn't that. So it's maybe that's what I'm judging it against. Again, you can go through all that and be thrilled with the David Blau hire. I am. I've been here. You mentioned Sean McVay earlier. Year too early instead of a year too late, giving a young upstart a chance that's going to turn into something great. I have full confidence in that. I like David Blau a lot. I am bullish on his chances. Maybe not right away, but I think it's going to happen for him. I really do believe that. But we were kind of told this thing that didn't happen. Does that make sense? Maybe that's why I don't have the best taste in my mouth watching this staff sort of manifest in this way. It's it's kind of not what I was sold.
All it is more of a reference point that they are convinced that David Blau's a star.
Yep.
And they are doubling down, not only on just hiring him, skipping 3 jobs basically, on rolling the dice big time to move on from Cliff for a guy that was never a quarterback's coach, never a pass game coordinator, just making him an OC and a play caller. That's going to raise some eyebrows around the league. But when you do that, generally you're going to have a couple other play callers in that room with him. Brian Johnson has done that. He is now gone, right? There are going to be other people, and they interviewed some of them, and I don't mind a Brian Johnson for leaving. You got passed over.
Yes.
Why do I want to stay and answer to a guy who basically I was above last year, who has now supplanted me in the pecking order? So I thought he was leaving all along. I'm actually surprised a guy like Anthony Lynn stayed as well, but maybe you pay up and you say, we're going to take good care of you because we need you around. I'm just surprised is all. But it just tells you they don't think that he needs as many of those voices and sounding boards in the room, so to speak. So that's where we're at. Lynn serves a really, really important job for me offensively for them right now. They need him to be David Blau's mentor, I think.
Yeah.
It's just going to be him because there's no one else to do it.
Okay, and you envision Dan Quinn helping in certain ways, right? He can be a good sounding board where Blau could go up to you as a defensive mind and say, hey, would this work against your defense? The answer could be yes or no. Here's why.
I don't want. Honestly, if Dan Quinn doesn't want to call plays and doesn't want to be involved and it's Durante Jones' show on the side of the ball that you got hired because you're good at running, I don't need you worried about offense. Sorry.
Yeah.
Get the other stuff right. Get the timeouts right. Let's not screw those up this year. Let's get 4th and 1 decisions right. You're a CEO now. Be a CEO. Be a good one. Be the best CEO coach in the NFL.
I was thinking like midweek game planning type stuff, but in general, of course, I agree with you. That to me is a binary acceptable or unacceptable. They're on the unacceptable side of that, so that needs to be handled. That to me is 100% correct. Yes, I'm just thinking in terms of, hey man, break down. What do you see with this defense? As I'm looking at them studying, I'm stumped. Do I want to run this thing or that thing or something in between? What do you think would work? Using some of that been around football enough wisdom. But yeah, I mean, you're right. In the positive spin on the glass half full is they must believe in Blau so strongly that you've got a brand spanking new guy that's jumped up 3 or 4 levels to get this gig, and it's not as if there's a bunch of 15, 20-year veteran coaches kind of under his blanket to support him.
Grant and Danny with you on the Fan. If you want to join us to discuss the coaching staff, 800-636-1067. One other thought, just while we're talking coaching for a second. I mentioned the Rams put out the list of their staff, and that's how we found out about Brian Johnson leaving the organization. This is an area where I'm not sure why teams don't try to take more advantage. There's no salary cap on coaching. There's a salary cap on players. You can only spend so much, and it's equal for every team. You could spend as much as you want on coaching. You're starting to see more and more where teams will try to do whatever they can to keep a guy like Brian Flores in the building as a DC. So you might offer him head coach type money. But why don't you just have the biggest staff with the most resources? The Rams are doing that.
Yep.
Like I'm looking at Sean McVay's staff, and I'm going, damn.
That's pretty good staff.
Look at all the money they're spending. This guy, Bubba Ventrone, former Hard Knock star, is supposed to be a head coach at some point, the special teams coach. Chris Shula got a bunch of head coaching interviews this year, pulled his name from one or two of those. The defensive coordinator. Nate Schilhaas pulled his name from a couple, I think the Browns job, among others. Offensive coordinator, who's going to be a head coach soon. So, those are the three rising stars. But then you've got a who's who of veteran coaches that are around as well. Then they bring in young players to develop them, like Robert Woods, who's now just retired, going to be their assistant wide receivers coach this year. Then you are the only team that I know of that has just a straight listed assistant head coach who's still getting paid to be a head coach somewhere else, who's just directly underneath of your head coach. I mean, the confidence you have to have in yourself and in your own shadow to be a guy that brings in like a Cliff Kingsbury just to list him as an assistant head coach to stand next to you with a whistle. Obviously, Sean McVay's got nothing to worry about. He's gotten more extensions than you and I have, underwear in the drawer.
Yeah.
But a lot of coaches don't do it. You think Dan Quinn is just bringing in some sharp defensive mind to be an assistant head coach, non-coordinator this year? No chance.
Yeah, it's one
Guys
of those.
don't want to be threatened like that.
Exactly. I remember that was one of my biggest faults with Jay Gruden for so many years was you hiring guys to be the DC that were not going to be the DC anywhere else. Whereas Sean McVay's like, yeah, I got Wade Phillips, a guy that normally you'd be threatened by. I ain't threatened by anybody. I know what I'm about, and that was always a big source of criticism for me. But yeah, I mean, you said it well. There's no salary cap on the coach, so this is where you can absolutely win an arms race here. Right? I mean, I'm not saying anybody they've got is bad or incompetent or otherwise, but that's a place where you can beef up resources as much as you're willing to.